Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel, my friends. Today is the original series day, and today we are watching Season 1, Episode 16, the Galileo 7. My friends, I don't know what to expect. I never do, but I'm getting spoiled because I have witnessed through these first 15 episodes some of the greatest television I've ever seen. And that's no bullshit. That is incredible. These stories, these characters, these guest stars, everything is mind-blowing. I had no idea. I've said it once and I've said it again. I'll say it a million times. The original series has exceeded any expectation by a light year. It is just it's my favorite track. It is absolutely fantastic. My friends, if you could do me a favor, hit that like button, smash the subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. You'll be alerted anytime we hit the next episode of the original series, Lower Decks, The Expanse, any of our sci-fi offerings. You'll be alerted and can join us, my friends. And of course, if you want any of those adventures early or in their full-length format, the link to the Patreon is in the description. But all my friends, that's then. This is now. And what's now? I'm excited if you can't tell. Second cup of coffee, everybody. Now it's time for the original series, Season 1, Episode 16, the Galileo 7. Nothing to it but to do it, my friends. Prepare to engage maximum warp reaction. And away we go. Most beautiful ship in all the galaxy. The Enterprise. Ooh, speaking about beautiful.
Our course leads us past Murasaki 312. Priceless opportunity for scientific investigation. On board is Galactic High Commissioner Ferris.
Does this guy have a half cape on?
Your mission is to get those emergency medical supplies to Marcus 3 in time for their transfer to the new Paris colony.
And may I remind you that I have standing orders to investigate all quasars and quasar-like phenomena wherever they may be encountered.
In other words, shut up.
3 days to Marcus. And the rendezvous doesn't take place for 5.
Look at that. Look at that full arc shot.
Captain to Galileo. All systems cleared for takeoff.
Oh, we get our first shuttle. Look at this. The greatest officer in Starfleet. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Data's probably the only one that could rival him. It's Spock. He's number one. No offense, Data. Nice.
Readings normal. Acceleration normal. Phase.
The Galileo 7, eh?
3.7.
All the blues on one side.
Stop forward momentum, Mr. Latimer.
Latimer. I think that's what they said. Latimer?
Galileo to Enterprise. Galileo to Enterprise.
Oh, boy.
Being hit by violent radiation on outer hull.
Wow. We got 3 members of senior staff on there.
Just a few words about being pulled off course.
Try and get me a fix on the Galileo.
Scanners are blank, Captain. We're getting a mass of readings I've never seen before.
Thank God Sulu's at the helm. He doesn't seem especially concerned about this.
What is it, Captain?
That thing out there is ionized complete sector. None of our instruments worked.
Can't transport about either.
24-foot shuttlecraft. Off course. Out of control. Finding a needle in a haystack would be child's play.
Whew. Okay, Jim's going to tell us about the final frontier. I am digging this already, my friends, because anytime we get new lore in the original series, it's the origin of that lore. You know, even if it's out of air date and production order, still, this is our first shuttle experience with the Galileo 7. Galileo's in there. We have 7 people. I guess that's the name. But again, it's become a bit of a trope in Star Trek, again, with my limited experience, that when somebody has a shuttlecraft that goes missing, then you have like a survival type of episode. And you seem to get those quite a bit, you know. But again, this is the first one of those. And so anything that I've seen afterwards that deals with, you know, shuttle crash and things like that, I push all that to the side because this is the first time we've seen it. And I won't have anything flavor this experience. This is new and fresh. I'm trying to look at it with the eyes of someone that's never seen anything. So we'll see, my friends. The Galileo 7. Look at that beauty in front of that beauty.
The effect has rendered our normal searching systems useless. Without them, we are blind and almost helpless.
I was opposed to this from the very beginning. Our flight to Marcus 3 is of the very highest priority.
We have 2 days to find them.
2 days. In all that? 2 days.
What would you have me do? Turn around and leave them there?
You shouldn't have sent them out in the first place.
Don't second guess him. Ever.
It's type M. Oxygen, nitrogen, and it's listed as Taurus 2. It's unexplored.
Taurus 2.
It's just about dead center of the Murasaki effect.
So it's somewhere in there. That's interesting. Oh, wow. Bones, we need you, bud. Look at him snapping in, baby.
Mama? Now that's what I call a ride. Galileo to Enterprise. Galileo to Enterprise, come in, please.
You don't really expect to get an answer, do you?
I expect nothing, Mr. Scott. It is merely logical to try all the alternatives.
I expected nothing.
Mr. Latimer, Mr. Gaetano, you'll arm yourselves.
Gaetano.
Scout out the area.
Nice, nice, nice. I like those holster sashes they have.
Then you don't think they'll find us? Not as long as we're grounded. We may be here for a very long time, Doctor.
Well, let's not give up hope here, Spock. I mean, the solution's in the problem while we're grounded.
Mr. Sulu.
Yes, Captain.
Anything on your scanners?
Totally inoperative, sir. No readings at all.
Have you tried tying into the auxiliary power?
Yes, sir. No change.
Time to make a fire, a signal flare, something that they could spot.
Are the transporters beaming up yet?
Not 100%, Captain. We beamed down some inert material, but it came back in a dissociated condition. We wouldn't dare try it with people.
Oh, God.
Prepare Columbus for immediate exit or a search of the planet's surface. Correlate coordinates with Mr. Sulu. Thank you.
Sending down another shuttle, Jim?
Transmission is blocked, reception impossible.
Uhura, you're the best if you can break through it. If you can't, nobody can.
You don't really think you'll have any luck, do you?
You need to leave the bridge.
Is that clear? If it isn't, I suggest you look at Book 19, Section 433, Paragraph
I'm
12.
familiar with the regulations, Commissioner.
Do not quote regulation.
Launch shuttlecraft Columbus.
I do like having somebody in a position of authority over Jim, though. I always think that's, we had that in the menagerie, and I like that. I like that dynamic.
Oh, I know you, Mr. Spock. You've never voiced it, but you've always thought that logic was the best basis on which to build command. Am I right?
He lives his life like that.
Well, it'll take more than logic to get us out of this.
Will it?
But I neither enjoy the idea of command, nor am I frightened of it. It simply exists.
I love how Spock and Bones can go at each other. By the way, the practical shuttle prop is amazing. I like how they can go at one another and still be friendly,
And if we ever hope to make orbit, we'll have to lighten our load by at least 500 pounds.
Have to leave some people.
Dr. McCoy, with very few exceptions, we use virtually every piece of equipment aboard this craft in attaining orbit. There's very little excess weight, except among the passengers.
You mean 3 of us must stay behind?
Unless the situation changes radically, yes.
And who's to choose?
As commanding officer, the choice will be mine.
You wouldn't be interested in drawing lots.
A very quaint idea, Mr. Bowman, but I do believe I'm better qualified to make the selection than any random drawing of lots.
Is he Mr. Bowman or Bomer?
Mr. Spock, life and death are seldom logical. But attaining a desired goal always is, Doctor.
Yep. Don't think Spock's not going to pick himself to stay down there.
Minor damage was overlooked. It was when they put his head together.
Not his head, Mr. Bowman. His heart.
I can't tell if that was a compliment or not. Okay, so this is Gaetano and Latimer, and they are not wearing red, but maybe they should be.
It's from up there.
Go back. Can I help out? Go back. There has to be a regulation against hearing something spooky.
Let's get out of here.
Could these be hallucinations? I mean, there's a lot of crap in this atmosphere and the ionization. Whatever lives here is going to be interesting. Great set. Oh. Did you see the size of that spear? Oh my God, that spear is like 20 feet long.
What was it?
I'm guessing a spear, Spock.
Poor Latimer. Well, at least it was quick for him.
Quick! He got hit in the back with a 20-foot spear and then fell.
I don't doubt your word.
Well, there must be something. I swear I hit it.
Dear God.
What about Latimer?
My concern for the dead will not bring him back to life, Mr. Bowman.
Yeah, he's not gonna...
In the interest of efficiency, you don't think we should leave his body here?
Bringing him back to the ship should not interfere with our repair efforts. If you need assistance,
We'll do it.
You're asking too much from Spock. He's not gonna sit here and mourn Latimer's loss. That's not what he does. He needs to save everybody else that's still alive. He moves on. It's not Spock being, insensitive. He's not sensitive to begin with.
Any word from engineering on our sensors?
They're working on them, sir. Still inoperable.
What about the transporters?
They're still reported unsafe.
Thank you. Lieutenant.
Captain,
Oh, shut up, dude.
I don't relish the thought of abandoning your crewmen out there. However, I must remind you,
I haven't forgotten, Commissioner.
you're running out of time.
I haven't forgotten that, Commissioner.
I possess a watch.
Uhura, order the Columbus to open its course 2 degrees on every lap from now on.
Widen the spiral.
2 degrees means you'll be overlooking more than a dozen terrestrial miles on each search loop.
Also means we have a fighting chance to cover the majority of the planet's surface.
You got to take the risk. It's a good point by Sulu, but again, he's, Kirk's running out of time.
24 more hours, Captain.
Eat shit, man. Get the transporter working so you can beam him down there.
This should save us at least 50 pounds, Mr. Spock. Excellent, Doctor.
We should be able to scrape up another 100 pounds.
Which would still leave us at least 150 pounds overweight.
It's one person.
Serious about leaving someone behind. Now, whatever it is out there,
You can come back for him.
It's 1 life, then 6, Doctor.
I'm not talking about rationality.
You might be wise to start.
It's a rational transaction. 1 life for many.
Doctor, perhaps you know the correct words for such an occasion.
Mr. Spock, that's your place.
My place is here.
With the living. I agree.
Here, at least let us die like men, not machines.
By dealing with first things first, I hope to increase our chances of staying alive.
Boy, both Spock and Kirk getting an earful from people. I don't appreciate it. I stand against it.
The pressure's dropping.
Thank God they got Montgomery there.
We have no fuel.
Well, it would seem to solve the problem of who to leave behind. Consider the alternatives, Mr. Scott.
We have no fuel. What alternatives?
Mr. Scott, there are always alternatives.
Mr. Spock, something's happening outside.
Well, let's not leave the safety of the shuttle, everybody. Latimer got bisected by a 20-foot spear.
If we stand by and do nothing, we're just giving them an invitation to come down and slaughter us.
I'm frequently appalled by the low regard you Earthmen have for life.
Now, I say we hit them before they hit us.
Practical, not logical.
To take life indiscriminately.
The majority.
I'm not interested in the opinion of the majority, Mr. Gaetano. The components must be weighed. Our dangers to ourselves as well as our duties to other life forms. Friendly or not.
Listen to Spock.
You follow my orders. To the letter. Firing only when so instructed. And at my designated targets.
Now you're talking.
You'll fire to frighten, Mr. Gaetano. Not to kill.
Oh, further. You saw what they did to Latimer?
I am in command, Mr. Gaetano.
He's in charge. Boy, oh boy. They can pick and choose when they want to disobey orders or stand up and this doesn't fly. Starfleet must not be as military as I'm giving him credit for, because I love this. I love Spock having, being focused on this. We've had a lot of Kirk and I love Kirk, but it's time. It's time for Spock. It's time for everybody else. And this is really, really good. We're just throwing everything. First off, can you imagine being in the prop department and they come in? We need a 20-foot leather shield. Excuse me, what? When do you need it? This afternoon.
I can't see them.
I hear them.
It's great stage dressing, too.
I say we hit them dead on.
Yes, I know, but fortunately I'm giving the orders.
The Vulcan insults are my favorite. The matter of fact that probably, I'm not sure he means them to be insulting, but they are just fantastic. Fortunately, I'm in command. 2 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
Again, I still say we should have killed them.
It was not necessary. Fear will do for us what needs to be done.
I like that idea.
Mr. Gaetano, you remain on guard here, keeping contact with the ship.
Honestly, you're not even sure if you can kill them. You assume you can kill them with phasers, but you don't know that. I like how you guys act like you're thinking about a mutiny.
Did you find them?
Yes, we found them. They won't bother us again.
That's a pretty bold statement, but
Scotty has an idea. It's dangerous, but it might work.
those are my favorites, Scotty.
To function with a substitute fuel supply.
It's all very well, but we don't have a substitute supply.
Aye, we do. Our phasers.
Trouble is, they happen to be our only defense.
It would also seem to be our only hope.
Aye.
You're going to have to do it. Now, remember when they overcharged the one phaser in Conscience of the King?
Doctor, your phaser.
Yeah, because those create a hell of a boom.
Go to work, Mr. Scott.
Aye, aye, sir.
I noticed Spock didn't relinquish his gun, his phaser. Captain, we beamed down a banana, and we got back a banana with a face.
Captain, it's a big planet. It'll be sure luck if our landing parties find anything.
I'm depending on luck, Lieutenant. It's almost the only tool we have that'll work now.
That would have sucked to have been that guy. He didn't get any FaceTime. He had lines, but no FaceTime. I think back in the day that you had to have both for... Ooh. No. You're literally making yourself a bigger target, a more visible target. Katana, it's time to run. It's time to run. Well, this guy's got his arms up and everything. Katana. Oh. Dear God. Well, that's a big foot.
Just where are you going?
I have a certain scientific curiosity about what's become of Mr. Gaetano. Return to the ship, please.
Spock. I guess the good thing about having no emotions, you no longer have any fear.
Do you really think the ship will ever leave?
Well, it won't unless we get these phasers back.
I got a bottle of whiskey waiting for me back in sickbay. Oh, I'm loving Spock. Alive or dead? Oh, granted, it doesn't look good, but... He must be obviously dead. Again, that's not easy to do, is to simply throw somebody up in a fireman's carry. Nimoy made that look effortless. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to mention that one afterwards. That got real close to actually hitting Nimoy. That was crazy. Good shot. Now, this is a full practical set with the shuttle, which would create I wonder if they had different variations of the shuttle, like a 3-side shuttle or like the rear open shuttle. I can't imagine that they would, which means they're filming inside of this thing. It's a lot of constraints. It's an enclosed area.
All right, Spock, you have all the answers. What now?
Omega tone is increasingly hostile.
My tone is the only thing that's hostile, Mr. Spock.
Curious.
Spock, it's time to think outside the box, and for you, that means think illogically. That's the logic.
And inculcated resentment on your parts. The sum of the parts cannot be greater than the whole.
First off, Scotty is still working. Scotty hasn't stopped working throughout this entire moment. That's really good environmental reaction, with the shake and everything. It's good, too, to see Spock's shortcomings.
You have 2 hours and 43 minutes, Captain.
I'm perfectly aware of how much time I have left.
I am delighted, however, I shall continue to remind you.
You do that.
It's my job to be a huge prick.
Keep your nose off my bridge, I'd be thankful.
There we go.
I'm in command here, Mr. Ferris.
You
That's
are,
right.
Captain. For another 2 hours and 42 minutes.
Ooh.
Mr. Scott, how much power do we have left in the ship's batteries?
Well, they're in good shape, but they won't lift us off if that's what you're getting at.
Will they electrify the exterior of this ship?
That they will, Mr.
All right,
Spock.
so get to the center of the ship. Don't touch the plates. Be sure you're insulated.
I'll light him up.
All right, go.
Oh, great effect.
Again.
Oh, we got something.
Mr. Gaetano's body is back there. It will, of course, have to be left behind.
Not without a burial.
I wouldn't recommend it. The creatures won't be far away.
My God.
Expose members of this crew to unnecessary peril.
I'll take that chance.
You're disobeying an order.
All right, Mr. Bowman, you'll have your burial, provided the creatures will permit it.
I mean, you got what you wanted, Bomer. I mean, I'm not sure you're going to want what you got, though.
Captain Kirk.
Me and my capelet are here to be dicks.
You're procrastinating, Captain. You have your orders. Recall your search parties and proceed to Marcus 3 immediately.
Uhura, we need you to play along with communications being down.
Prepare to abandon search. Set course for Marcus 3.
Jim's between a rock and a hard place with this one. See, by having the commissioner on board, it forces his hand. I like that.
How long before the Columbus comes on board?
23 minutes, sir.
23 minutes.
Jim never gets a break.
We can cut out of orbit and save enough fuel for a controlled re-entry.
To land here again. Not a very attractive possibility.
No.
When can we lift off, Scott?
Maybe 8 minutes if the weight's right.
Ship will lift off in exactly 10 minutes. You have that long to bury Mr. Gaetano. Now it appears to be clear outside, at least for the moment. I'll assist you. Hurry.
I mean, I appreciate it. I appreciate the, the respect given to the fallen. But I think even Gaetano would tell you not to do this if it meant everybody else's life.
All systems report secured for warp factor.
Oh.
Proceed on course for Marcus 3. At space normal speed.
You just have to be heading in the direction to follow orders. Oh, Spock. That always gets me. Go on without me.
Get us off, Scott. We should be moving, but we're not.
Something's holding on.
Seem to be holding us down. All systems are go, but we're not moving.
Electrify one more time.
An hour from now, we may be right back where we started from.
According to Scott, no, you won't be. Come on. Jim's gambit might pay off here.
Orbit in 1 minute, Mr. Scott. Fuel status?
15 pounds PSI. Approximately enough for one orbit, sir.
Oh, my God.
You said a while ago that there were always alternatives.
Did I? I may have been mistaken.
You may have been mistaken, but you're not mistaken about one thing. Jim knows how to massage the rules.
Well, Mr. Spock, so ends your first command.
Not yet.
With our present fuel, that gives us about 45 minutes.
Radio, radio, radio.
Galileo to Enterprise. Galileo to Enterprise. Come in, please.
Uhura. I know Uhura's listening. What have you got, Spock?
Mr. Spock.
Make noise. He's making noise.
The orbit will start decaying as soon as the fuel's exhausted. Say 6 minutes.
Come on, Uhura. Oh, a close-up.
Captain, something there on the screen. Taurus 2.
Oh, Uhura should have been the one to see it or hear it.
A meteorite? No, it's holding a lateral line. There to scan.
It's them. Go, go, go.
Lieutenant Uhura, contact transporter room. All beams ready. Full normal speed.
Wow, they're hauling ass.
It's like sending up a flare. Mr. Spock, that was a good gamble.
Game recognizes game. I mean, I know they all make it, but Jesus, the tension. Can you imagine? I can't. Many of you have watched this when it first aired. This must have been crazy.
Getting hot.
It's the least of your worries right now. Come on.
Captain, transporter room just beamed up 5 persons. Alive and well.
Look at Jim's face. Look at that smile. Oh, Bill.
Mr. Sulu, proceed on course to Marcus 3.
Oh, this guy, man.
Ahead warp factor 1.
Aye, sir.
He can't cheer. You know, he can't pump his fist in the air. That's all that Jim could do. Oh, I love it. Jesus, this show gets me every week.
When you jettisoned the fuel and you ignited it, you knew that there was virtually no chance of it being seen, and yet you did it anyhow. And that would seem to me to be an act of desperation.
Quite correct, Captain. Quite simply, Captain. I examined the problem from all angles, and it was plainly hopeless. Logic informed me that, under the circumstances,
a desperate act.
Well, action would have to be one of desperation. Logical decision, logically arrived at.
Ha ha ha.
Ha ha ha.
It's time for an emotional outburst.
Well, I wouldn't put it in exactly those terms.
He got you in a logic trap, Spock.
You're not going to admit that for the first time in your life, you committed a purely human, emotional act?
No, sir.
You're a stubborn man.
Yes, sir.
Everybody's laughing. I wonder what else was said. Oh, that was great. All right, my friends, we just got done watching Star Trek, the original series, Season 1, Episode 16, the Galileo 7. And my friends, the only thing left to do is to talk about it. All right, my friends, we just got done watching Star Trek, the original series, Season 1, Episode 16, the Galileo 7. Again, friends, this show gets me every week. I just absolutely love watching it. I love learning more about these characters. I love seeing them grow. I like seeing them develop. And again, it is absolutely amazing to me. And it's a testament to all the associate producers and everybody that's kind of tasked with story, like canon, security, making sure that everything, the scripts and everything play right. But beyond that, beyond making things canonically accurate, whenever you go from like writer to writer, the ability to develop these characters in an episodic format as opposed to serialized, the fact that they're pulling it off is amazing. It really, really is. It's really, technically, it's a testament to the actors, because the writers, in most part, aren't privy to the adventures that have come before, the other episodes, unless the director happened to be like Vincent McEvedy, who has, numerous episodes under their belt. You're not going to be able to even pull from what you know about the characters. You're going to have to assume that what's on the written page is accurate, that you can proceed with that. Thus, it really kind of is up to the actors. The actors have to continue their characters knowing what they have already done. And you can see that, especially with Leonard Nimoy, especially with Bill Shatner, DeForest Kelley. Everybody's building off of the things they've done before. And you can absolutely see that too with Nichelle Nichols, Uhura, and with George Takei, Sulu. You can see them kind of building off things that they've done before, knowing full well that, the audience might not have that. They might have missed an episode. They might not have watched things sequentially. Like me, they've never seen anything, and it's up to them. They are the caretakers of these characters. It's a sheer testament to the passion for the character and the love for the character, because if you didn't care about who you were portraying, you didn't care about Sulu, you didn't care about Kirk. If you didn't care, you wouldn't worry about it. That's extra work for you. Why would you? You just go by whatever the page said. You're doing your job, You're not going above and beyond. We have these endearing characters that only evolve and only get better. And it's absolutely amazing to witness and behold. Now, to the story proper, we had an absolutely, again, this is the first, I mentioned at the top of the episode that this is a trope of a crashed shuttle. We've seen this before. I've seen it a few times. Obviously, you all probably seen it a lot more. And, with that trope, it's in retrospect, we've seen it done so many times, but this was the first time. The first time we see the shuttles, the first time we saw the Galileo, the first time we saw the Columbia, the first time we've seen anybody represent. And I thought the practical shuttle effects were amazing. I think that, again, placing all of those things as a static set piece is phenomenal, especially when you have an interior. Again, I'm going to look this up for Q&A. Did they have one version of the shuttle? Did they have like an open-ended shuttle where either the end was open or one of the sides was open for filming purposes? It didn't look like it. It looked like this was a practical shuttle that probably had the back end that could come off because of the way that they shot a few times. But again, maybe not. It might have actually been a fully practical effect that they sent in the cameras, which is incredible considering how, I always say, how clunky those damn cameras were back then. They were huge. And so you could see that there was a lot of really interesting shots used. And it was obviously for economy because, they took a low shot with Scotty and got him on the floor so they could look up. Obviously there'd probably be more space the lower they got with the camera and the operator. It was a great idea. It was, a lot of, I always call it like, it's guerrilla warfare whenever you're filming, whenever you have to make something work, where you're like, we don't have what we need to wage proper war, but we can still be effective. And that's what, like guerrilla filmmaking happens to be. You just figure it out, And I love that. It just shows such an innovation and such a, again, we always talk about the money in Star Trek. They were always looking to cut corners. Imagination is free. And if they are able to utilize that and put it into process, that saves pennies. And I think that we witnessed a lot of that in the Galileo 7. I found it interesting that whenever they were sent out to do all of this, you didn't have any security personnel on with the red shirts, but for a second, I'm like, they went out without any armed escort into that. And then I realized, why would they? They were going out to monitor this nebula and take readings. So they had a science team with them and then an engineer and blah, blah, blah. So there wasn't really a reason to have, security personnel. You weren't getting out of the shuttle or anything like that. And so that was a realistic way of going about it. Normally they would have, if you think of all the other excursions or away missions they've had, there's usually been a red shirt with them. This made sense that there wasn't. So again, even little details like that, details that that I think are wrong initially, upon further inspection, they of course are right, because everybody on the other side of the camera is watching to make sure that this show keeps its integrity. It keeps like structural integrity as it continues through the course of season 1. Another testament to the passion behind the project. Great, great stuff. And so now with all of that, this was a Spock set piece. This was, thank goodness, because we haven't had one of these yet. We've had Spock doing things before. I think our earliest example of kind of like a Spock-centric mission would have been the Menagerie. Whenever he was going in to, free Pike and getting back to the Telosians to make sure that he could live, in some semblance of peace. And that whole planning process, we got to see a lot of Spock. We got to see Spock kind of on his own. I always think about him like fighting the people inside of the Starbase's communications array. Like he was in it, It was a little sloppy at that point, but seeing Spock in command and kind of pushing that character to the forefront is incredibly necessary, because Spock is such an amazing, to me, the most interesting crew member on the Enterprise, and that includes Jim. Spock has so much story at this point too. Oh my God, untapped potential across the board. His history, Vulcan history, where did he come from? What all can Spock do? Spock is a book that we have not opened yet, and that book is like War and Peace. We have got a lot of pages to get through. And this was like the first Once Upon a Time. Let's take a look at Spock. And I really enjoyed it, and putting him in command was a really nice touch. It was really, really good. I like the idea that he was being questioned about for story purposes, I like the idea that his command was being questioned. For practical purposes, I don't. I was torn between that. I understand what they were doing. They needed Spock to be questioned. They needed it. And it had to come from somebody other than Bones, because Bones always questions Spock, so there's no real weight to it anymore. It's something you expect from Bones. You expect him to bitch and complain about stuff, and thus you don't really get a chance to, having him do it constantly, it negates its effect. But if you have everybody else like Bomer and, Gitano and all these people kind of step up and question his ability to do this, and then if you augment that questioning with kind of the veteran experience presence of Bones coming forward and, questioning the logical approach, it was a really great way of, showing conflict when Leonard Nimoy can't show conflict. By that, I mean, if you had somebody else, a non-Vulcan, a human, who was in the same position as Spock with their authority being questioned, that actor can then, he or she can then say, they can portray despair or indecisiveness, or am I doing the right thing? They can get all up in their feelings. Spock can't. Leonard Nimoy can't portray Spock like that. He can't have Spock. He did have Spock raise his voice a couple times, which I actually appreciated. But, he can't have him like strike somebody or scream him down, or you can't do that. So it's up to your acting partner, the person across from you in line delivery, to give you what you can't your character can't say. So we had heightened emotions from everybody else, the questioning, the attacks, your logic driven, and then that was reinforced by a familiar face and Bones. Again, the writing for these shows is so expertly done. It comes across so effortlessly, yet there's so much effort in it, which, only the true masters can make something that difficult look that easy. And I love it. I love it. Now, the one thing too is this is the first time I've seen them that I can remember. There's been bits and pieces of the questioning of the logical approach to either decision making, command, all of the above, scientific research, whatever it happens to be. We've had a few kind of drive-bys of, is logic the right thing to be doing right here? But this was the first full-on trial of logic. Logic was put on trial, and especially the ability of logic to, be the principal guiding factor in command. It was really well done, though, because in one moment, you had Spock kind of outwardly monologuing about why logic should have worked there. It should have worked. They should have been frightened away. They should have, and he's kind of like going through his own process. Like, what did I miss? This is logic. And again, everybody else is right. This was like the tribe that they were fighting. They were hunters. They weren't, tacticians. They weren't thinking, they weren't evolved enough, I guess, to have those types of like higher levels of thought or approach or, whether it be like politics or whatever it happened to be between, the enemy and the shuttle crew. So you had to be able to show this logical kind of debate, this trial of logic, and it had to play through Spock too. And we saw that. And again, it's a fantastic way of allowing Leonard Nimoy to develop the character. And presumably, when they move on to the next episode, the audience is supposed to forget about all that, because it won't be reflected in the script for the next episode. But Leonard Nimoy will remember. DeForest Kelley will remember. For instance, Scott will be able to never be able to utter the words, hey, remember back on Taurus 2 when you saved our bacon with that awesome play of ejecting the fuel? He can't say that, but he can flavor responses in the future with that knowledge. And I think that's what we're going to see here and what we have been seeing in the episodic kind of formula of Star Trek. Now, my final thing, because this episode was a banger and it was a really good one. Again, there have been so many great episodes. This was a really, really good episode. I wouldn't say so much that it is, the S tier of everything, but it's still a very good, very above average. It's just that comparatively speaking, with so many amazing episodes, I have to start figuring out a way to slot these in to make them kind of work. This does get a bump for me because it was kind of Spock centric. It gets a bump for me because we had a conflict of authority on the ground with Spock and the GALILEO 6, though not counting himself. And then we had a conflict of authority in space with the commissioner and Jim. I always like when Jim can be, muscled. When Jim can't use his, because Jim never would have left. He would have stayed there. And then thus that robs us of that awesome scene at the end with Spock ejecting the fuel. But, Jim has a way of being Jim. I just have to follow the rule to be on my way to give the plague Vic to New Paris. He never said how fast we have to be going, so he left at impulse, which was baller, just to buy himself some few more seconds, Jim Kirk, everybody, just love it. There's two moments in this that I really wanted to focus on. One is stunt-oriented, and I mentioned it during the reaction. When Spock is sitting there, firemen carrying out Gitano, and those spears come raining in, that second one that's thrown hits that rock outcropping inches from Leonard Nimoy's face. And you can actually see it, I think, blast off a chunk of what looks like styrofoam or some type of like foam core. And you can see it kind of rip off, and there's a white kind of exposed area that's set there. That got so close to hitting Leonard Nimoy in the head. I mean, I don't think it'd get closer without clocking him. And, they weren't thrown with like lethal force, but I mean, I guarantee you that if that had like hit his eye, that's it. We have a blind Leonard Nimoy now, which seems like I'm being hyperbolic, but I mention it every time I see it. These stunts that they do, even something that looks benign like that, are dangerous. And the fact that you have Shatner and Nimoy and basically anybody that's asked performing these stunts, in a show that has such a tight shooting schedule blows my fucking mind. I cannot believe they do it. And I can't believe they do it as often as they do it, you know? Well, actually, I should say they pulled back a little bit from some of the physical stunts that we saw earlier in the season, but still, this is indication right away that, you know, anything can happen on these sets. And from what you all have told me, the best of the stunts is yet to come. And by best, I mean, there are things coming that you all have told me about where our principal people get hurt for real. And unreal, you know, that's just something that I've picked up on from The Cage, you know, that they've had these incredible stunts that they ask them to do. Amazing stuff. And last but certainly not least, even though this was a Spock-centric episode, my moment goes to Jim when he knows that they got him. And Uhura says, oh, they've got 5. That nice, slow close on Shatner's face. And he holds it all together. He doesn't punch his fist in the air, doesn't scream, he doesn't cry, he doesn't, you know, emote in any way. And you have that light smile play across his face. And I always think about the end of Balance of Terror when he has to tell Angela, you know, comfort Angela after Robert Tomlinson's death. And the end with the credits kind of superimposed over Jim walking out into the hallway, striding, his face kind of like emotionless. He has to go from moment to moment to moment, leaving the good, the bad, the ugly behind and on to the next moment. But he allowed himself that faintest of smiles. And that's Shatner. That is Shatner. And you know what? Everybody that says, oh, you know, Shatner's an overactor, he may be. I may see something in the future and be like, that's what they mean by this. So far, friends, hell no. Bill Shatner has been knocking it out of the park. And that is acting, you know, for me, and I am by no means the authority figure on any of this, but recognizing and seeing him work that character, play James T. Kirk like a fine musical instrument, and he produced just the right note, subtle, quiet, almost a little bit above a whisper, that little smile across the face. The original series, my friends, when you need the very best, accept no substitute. My friends, if you could do me a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe, and ring-a-ding-ding that bell for notifications. You'll be alerted the next time we go live with the original series or Lower Decks or The Expanse or any of our sci-fi offerings. You'll be made aware and can join us, my friends. And of course, if you'd want any of that early, link to the Patreon is in the description. But that's all from my end, my friends. The only thing that we have left right now is to talk to Q for a little Q&A. Q? Greetings, mon capitaines, and welcome to another installment of Q&A. Friends, this is where, after having watched and reacted to an episode, I go back and I look up little bits of trivia and tidbits and special bits of information that if I had looked up beforehand, probably would have spoiled the episode for me. So what I'd like to do is share some of the things that I found. As always, we like to break this down into 5 components: writers and directors, guest stars, core cast, the production notes, and my favorite, were there any cuts for syndication? I always think it's interesting to see what exactly they would cut if they have to cut something. My friends, okay, so with this one, our writer is Oliver Crawford and our director is Robert Gist. Both of these newcomers to the Star Trek franchise, and I think they both really showed off pretty well here. Both of them, both direction and writing in this, were top-notch. I thought that we had some really powerful, tense scenes. I even mentioned during the reaction, you know, hey, I know everybody probably lives and everything, but the tension was real. I mean, that escape velocity with the shuttle and the gambit to blow up the fuel so the Enterprise would see, all expertly done, very well structured. Love it, love it, love it. And of course, we had that internal shot of the shuttle where either it was of a modular design where they could kind of take off a wall or take off the back to help with the camera insertion into the area. Regardless, this was the first time that it was used. And so Robert Gist didn't have any template in which to follow for shooting inside this shuttle. And I think it was incredibly well done, very imaginative with like lower shots that looked up kind of from the perspective, or you're down at the same level as Scotty as he was charging the phasers or draining the phasers. Really, really well done. Imaginative, using your imagination to cut costs and keep everything on schedule. Robert Gist, very good job, my friend. All right, guest stars. Who did we have guest starring in this episode? A lot of people. So for our guest stars, my friends, we have Don Marshall as Boma. I kept hearing Bomer and Bowman. It is Lieutenant Boma. More on him in a bit. John Crawford as Commissioner Ferris. More on him in a bit. Peter Marco as Gaetano. Phyllis Douglas as Yeoman Mears. And Ross Vaughn as the unfortunately impaled Latimer. So, my friends, as far as the core cast is concerned, who did we have in this episode when we talk about all of our kind of named crew members? All hands on deck. All hands accounted for in this one. We had Scotty, we had Sulu, we had Uhura, we had obviously the big three came in. Everyone was accounted for, my friends. Good, good stuff. Now, production notes, and we've got some doozies with this one. Okay, after this episode was filmed, there would never be any additional model work done with the shuttle. So any stock footage where a shuttle shot was needed came from this shoot. No other additional supplemental shots were ever used. Anything that they used, they drew from this area and this model kind of work that they did. They would mirror it, reflect it, angle it, do whatever they had to do with the film to make it look different, but they never filmed any additional footage. Now, the Galileo was destroyed in this episode. It burned up as everybody else. The 5 were beamed back to the Enterprise. However, it appears in 2 additional episodes, but ultimately gets a bit of a retcon when the words Galileo 2 is painted at a later episode to kind of let you all know that, no, this is the sequel. This is Galileo 2. But initially, it still says Galileo, making the shuttle appear a bit immortal. But isn't it anyway? And the next point, in what appears to be a theme, the role of Yeoman Mears was originally supposed to be Grace Lee Whitney's Yeoman Janice Rand. However, with Janice having been written off of the series, all of these more recent, like whenever we see a yeoman inserted like we did for Shore Leave, any of those roles were meant for Janice Rand. And so there had to be writing and rework done there because there was a lack of familiarity between these characters like Yeoman Mears and Yeoman Janice Rand, who had had more interaction with, command crew and Kirk and things like that. And so there was a lot of times lines were taken away from these subsequent actors who came in to play the yeoman role. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Now for the fun stuff, my friends. John Crawford, who played Commissioner Ferris, he said in an interview one time that he had a very unpleasant time on the bridge of the Enterprise. That's interesting. Okay, so in subsequent interviews in later years, he was asked to expand upon that. He expanded by saying the following without going into any further detail. When pressed in a later interview, John Crawford said that the Enterprise wasn't really to blame, nor was the bridge. It was her captain that was insufferable. Apparently not a big Bill Shatner fan. Now, the creative team loved Don Marshall and what he brought as Boma so much that they wanted him to become a reoccurring, if not a permanent cast member for the USS Enterprise, joining the crew on what would be kind of like a Scotty basis. There for every 3 episodes, we would get Boma. However, by the time they were able to actually put this offer out and try to get him into the series, he had already committed to another project, Land of the Giants. And thus the window closed. And by the time he was free again, our show was nearing its final days. Unfortunately, we'll never know exactly what Lieutenant Boma could have brought to the Enterprise, but I think this episode was very, very well done and a testament to what could have been Really great dynamics, especially between Boma and Spock. So every studio at the time, and still to this day, has a standards and practices division. And what their job basically was is to review everything that came to them as, here's the final print of our episode. They would pore over it and make sure that there wasn't anything in there that might be deemed inappropriate. And so to avoid, FCC or the equivalency of, some type of fine or some type of, maybe even some type of action levied against the studio, standards and practices would come in, pour over everything, and note to the creatives or the production team of whatever series they were looking at, hey, everything's good, or hey, a couple things you need to change. In this episode, for the first time, standards and practices had to send something back to the production team of Star Trek. And they said, listen, you can't have Latimer lying there on the ground with a 20-foot spear sticking out of his back. So, and again, I didn't really notice this during the episode, but during editing, I went back and when I was rewatching it, there is a pan down as soon as Gitano and Boma get over into the area, or Gitano's there. And as soon as it pans down, there's this kind of weird effect that seems to rise up, like almost like an instantaneous, like fog level increase. That was a special effect added to mask the body of Latimer. And that was added in after the fact and actually delayed this episode coming out because standards and practices needed this to be done. They could not air on television this shot of Latimer with this huge spear sticking out of him, which they say was pretty graphic since they actually had a special spear made with kind of a rounded tip, an absent tip on it to make it look like it was as deep in his back as it appeared whenever he pulled it out and had the red tip on the spear point, which apparently was fine. Standards and practices was perfectly fine with the removal of the spear and it covered in blood. No problems there, they said. And now, my friends, last but certainly not least, syndication cuts. When these went out to the affiliate, when they said, hey, here's the print, an affiliate would send back and say, oh, we love it, but we need it cut down by a minute. We need it cut down by 90 seconds. We need it cut down by 2.5 minutes. This was all basically based upon what they were being asked to provide for sponsorship and ad revenue. So if they had a particularly weighty commercial block where then there were a lot of commercials were being sold for Star Trek, then they would ask the production team to cut it down by the necessary time. I'm starting to think there's a theme going on here that speaks of a wider problem with Star Trek. No syndication cuts were ordered for this episode. The Galileo 7 went out completely free and uncut. That is a great thing in that it was able to be shown in the entirety of what the creatives had kind of seen for it. They wanted it to be this particular length and this particular cut. They got that. They got their 100% of what they wanted. The problem on the back end of all that is that means that they have the bare minimum of commercial spots available for each of these across the affiliates. There's no additional commercial or ad revenue being generated by Star Trek. That, my friends, is a warning sign. And I guarantee you that production, when they looked at that and they realized, hey, wait a minute, we've had 2, 3, 4 episodes now that haven't had any notable syndication cuts. That's a warning sign. That's a warning sign. And unfortunately, since we know that Star Trek only lasts 3 embattled seasons, this was probably one of those early warnings. But fortunately, my friends, we do have several more episodes and seasons of Star Trek, and it has been absolutely fantastic. But for now, I think that's all from Q&A. All of these tidbits, my friends, are now yours. And until next time we meet, behave.